Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. So today I want to talk about a stock that I'm currently buying and that I think will easily beat the expansion in the money supply. And that stock is a stock that's pretty hard to classify because it is Airbnb and nobody really knows in which category to put Airbnb. But I really like the stock because it has a niche in the tech market. It has a specific niche which makes it particularly interesting. So let me walk you through a little bit with my thesis on Airbnb. So first of all, Airbnb has a much broader vision statement uh, than we'd think. It's not just to replace hotels, or it's not just a threat to hotels. No, the mission statement of Airbnb is rooted in the millennial, in the Gen Z culture. It's belong anywhere, right? It's the idea that you can go somewhere in Europe, South America, anywhere you want, and you can and belong there and be welcome there. Um, by a host that will not only house you but also have you visit the area, really make you belong, make you feel home. So that's the whole mission of Airbnb. It's much broader than a hotel. Before I go into the qualitative thesis as to why I like Airbnb, let me just walk you through the numbers to kind of talk about how big of an opportunity this is. Airbnb is still growing at about 58% a year. At least they grew 58% a year between mid 2021 and mid 2022. Mid 2021, we were pretty much out of the situation that we had, right? So hotels was back, right? Everything was back in 2021 and 2022. So you can't say that the new demand for Airbnb that we see right now, the growth that we see right now, has something to do with what happened in 2020, right? It was past that, and the business is still growing extensively. And the reason why the business is growing so fast is because actually it's moving from a short stay platform, from a short term platform, to much more of a longer stay platform. Actually, it's 45% of all bookings are for stays longer than 7 days. So what you see there is that there is this change in trends where people just want to live everywhere in the country and just move from town to town, especially Gen Zs and millennials. That's something that they can do with Airbnb that they can't do with any other setup, and that they certainly can't do with hotels because hotels are too expensive for longer stays. Um, so I believe because of this different positioning, I believe Airbnb is well suited to keep growing at least at 50% a year. But assuming that for next year, for the forward year, forward earnings, assuming that they keep growing at the growth that they had, which is about 12% quarterly, that would give us $2 billion in earnings. So this is a tech stock that is actually profitable right now. And the forward PE is a 36, right? It's about the equivalent of Costco, right? It's a crazy low price to earnings ratio for a growth stock that has such a high moat, such a high network effect, and still grows at 58% per year. If you buy a business that grows its revenues 50% a year for, say, the next 5 to 10 years, paying a 36 PE is a steal. I would even argue that paying a 100 times earnings is a steal, but this is 36. This is a stock that has been unfairly punished by this market, I believe, and that's why I'm buying Airbnb, kind of an underfollowed company, but I'm really buying it, and I think it has a lot of future. What I love about Airbnb is how lean it is. It has very little debt, essentially no debt. The balance sheet is stellar. And they just announced a buyback, a $2 billion buyback, right? That's about 4% of the shares. So it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty 3 to 4%. It's a pretty big deal. This company, they are doing well, and the CEO knows full well that the company is undervalued. And I think a lot of savvy shareholders see that. So now that I've kind of highlighted the numbers, let me go through kind of my thing, which is the qualitative analysis. Numbers don't mean anything if we don't understand a business qualitatively. What I love about Airbnb is that sure, it takes a little bit of business from hotels, but contrary to popular belief, it's not there to replace hotels. Airbnb is all about induced demand. If you see the type of homes that you can rent, the type of apartments that you can rent, they have nothing to do with what a hotel would offer. Even a small boutique hotel would not be comparable to what Airbnb has to offer, right? Airbnb, for example, has been having a lot of growth in rural areas. There's not a lot of boutique hotels in rural areas, but you can go to Airbnb. A lot of odd places to stay, for example, with children are on Airbnb. Um, a lot of retreats are on Airbnb. There's so much induced demand from Airbnb that demand would not be there if Airbnb didn't exist, which is what I love about Airbnb. It's a positive sum game. It's not a zero sum game. It's not taking business from someone else. It's creating value on its own for itself by offering new options, right? Another thing that they do is they focus on experiences now. So you can rent an Airbnb experiences like a tour in a museum or a tour in a city. So they have a lot of optionality and a lot of things that they can offer, virtual experience. But you could rent other things. You could rent a wedding venue. You could rent a backyard, a swimming pool. There's so many different things that you can and will be able to rent on Airbnb as they create more demand for products that fulfill their mission of belonging anywhere. So I love that about Airbnb, the induced demand that their product has. The second thing that I love about Airbnb is similar in a lot of consumer-oriented tech firms is the network effects. Right, the network effects is tremendous for Airbnb. It would be next to impossible for someone right now to compete with them because they are the go-to platform for real estate owners. Any real estate owner thinking about a short-term rental will go to Airbnb. You have entire YouTube channels, entire websites, books dedicated to catering to Airbnbs. You have entrepreneurs who are building entire, plots of lands filled with houses and odd apartments that are specially designed to cater to Airbnb. So Airbnb has captured the real estate owners and what they want to do. That is their go-to platform, and that around the world. Airbnb is in the US, but one third of their revenue comes from Europe. They're very strong in Latin America. It's a worldwide company, and this is a network effect that they've been able to gain around the world. But that is for the offer side, right? As far as customers also see Airbnb as their go-to travel platform, right? Gen Z, millennials, they see Airbnb as their go-to platform on social media, on YouTube. This is what they watch. This is what they follow. Airbnb has replaced the Marriott or the Hilton, like the fancy hotel that people, many of us in our 30s, 40s, 50s, view as that premium experience. That is not the case anymore if you're Gen Z or if you're millennial, at least an early millennial. And so to you, your idea of something great is going to be an strange Airbnb somewhere. It's going to be a unique cabin, a unique A-frame. It's going to be a boat. That's a major change, and maybe we owe this to the current modern day culture. But Airbnb is really, really, really going off this wave and riding this wave. So that is a wonderful thing. Another thing that I love about Airbnb is just like Tesla owners or Apple owners, if you meet an Apple owner or Tesla owner or Apple product owner, they'll speak very highly of the company. And the same is true for a Airbnb user. It's very rare, I think, to meet an Airbnb user who doesn't love the company. People who are customers of Airbnb are advocates of Airbnb. It is a subculture. They've created a subculture of their own, just like Apple, just like Tesla, that they own. And so you see things like YouTube channels, like Levi Kelly, for example, who are entirely dedicated to staying at Airbnbs and filming videos of Airbnbs. This is almost closer to a social movement than it is a company. And that's why I think they've been able to create a brand that something like, of course, a Hilton or Marriott haven't been able to create, but even something like a booking.com has not been able to create. Like, I don't hear people say, oh, booking.com is awesome, go on booking.com, but you hear that for Airbnb a lot. So I think they have this unique brand, right, with a lot of customers advocates, network effects that are going to be very, very hard for overcome to anyone, right? Craigslist is still huge. The website is not that great, but it's still a huge website. Why? Because they have the network effects. Induced demand. They are not taking away demand from someone else. They're inducing their own demand through their innovation and through their products. Let me go on with my qualitative analysis. They're a truly, truly agile firm. And for this, I will take the example of what happened in 2020, right? They were able to pivot right away. They were able to just stop with the sale of housing in the city, the rental of housing in the city, with the stop of travel. They were able to deal with that and pivot and offer rural amenities, offer experiences, offer virtual experiences. This pivot, in my opinion, was one of the best pivot in the history of business. If you go back, look at Airbnb, look at how Airbnb did during the one event that you would think would really, really hurt their business. It didn't hurt them. They grew stronger. They pivoted. They went into a different business, a business of experiences. And to me, that is really the sign of a lean company. That's really the sign of an agile company and an anti-fragile company, a company that emerges stronger from hardship. That's what they showed in 2020. So that to me, that is a big plus. Another thing that I love about Airbnb is the CEO. So the CEO is the founder, right? He founded Airbnb with two other founders, but he still owns 12.5% of the business, $9.2 billion at current value. And by the way, that was closer to 15 billion about 9 months ago. So the CEO is all in. The CEO has skin in the game. And I listen to a lot of CEO interviews. When you listen to a CEO, he often points out that he's 40 years old, and he's just beginning with Airbnb, right? He's an entrepreneur almost as young as Mark Zuckerberg. These younger entrepreneurs. They're just beginning their business career. So you can be guaranteed that, not guaranteed, but you can be pretty certain that the CEO is going to stay with the firm for another 10, 15 years. The CEO entirely lives the mission. CEO lives on Airbnb, encourages employees, board members to live on Airbnb. That's what they do, right? And the whole work from anywhere culture that they implemented since 2020, that whole culture actually has pushed so many applicants, the best in software, to apply for Airbnb, because those that have been working for companies who are forced to go back to the physical office are applying to companies like Airbnb. So Airbnb is actually getting talent from its culture and from its work remote culture. I'll finish with this, which I truly, truly love for a tech firm. It's an incredibly lean business. One of my favorite metrics when I look at stocks is how much revenue does one employee generate? And so Airbnb, each employee at Airbnb is responsible, right? If you divide revenue by number of employees, is responsible for $12 million, right? So an employee, perhaps making $200,000 a year if you add in everything, generates $12 million a year. And that has been going up, and that will keep scaling. So as Airbnb grows 50% a year, 50% next year, 50% the year after, how much will an employee generate? 24 million per employee, 32 million per employee. Like, this is a type of business that can really, 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 really scale, because you don't add more human capital, your most expensive cost, right? You don't keep adding it as the firm grows. And so for comparison, let's see which is another business that I like quite a bit. Has pretty high revenue per employee, but not as high, right? Only 8 million per employee. Well, that's actually pretty high, but it's not as high as Airbnb. Airbnb is just like the ultimate platform as far as being lean goes. They're really good. And if you look at Marriott, and I think Marriott is very interesting. Marriott or Hilton, I could have taken Hilton too. They sold their real estate, right? Most of the physical buildings is owned by REITs now. So Marriott actually owns very little real estate now. But despite the fact that they spun off their real estate, Marriott is a company that only earns $1.3 million per employee, and they have so much more debt than Airbnb. So you can clearly see why I'm betting on Airbnb, right? I think the incumbents may be hurt if business travel were ever to shift to Airbnb, and that's not something that I would take off from Airbnb. Maybe one day they will focus on taking business and taking market share from hotels. Um, I just don't see it right now. See, right now, I think they're taking market share from hotels in the form of tourists and in the form of induced demand, new demand, right? A family that would not have been on a weekend getaway now has the opportunity to go on a weekend getaway because the price is good and the value is compelling. So anyways, I think Airbnb has a tremendous growth runway, and that's why I like the stock so much, and that's why I'm actively buying it right now. Of course, none of this is investment advice. Everything that I do is entertainment, always and forever. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.